This episode was recorded live at the Esomar Congress in Athens with the generous sponsorship of Question Pro. Welcome to Talking Insights. I'm your host, Antonio, and today we're diving again into the topic of sustainability in business. Joining us is Denise Hicks. Denise shares her expert insights on how companies can integrate sustainability into their business models and the challenge of building trust with consumers in today's polarized world. We also explore the evolving role of market research in shaping sustainable practice. Don't miss this conversation and learn how you can make sustainability work in the real world. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Denise, you're the practice director and global climate lead at C-Space.
Mouthful. I'm just greedy.
But you're also the co-founder of the Insight Climate Collective.
Yes.
All right. So you have a lot of things going on in your plate. So you were talking about sustainability and how companies can basically bring sustainability practice to their practices. It's interesting because we started doing the Esomar Climate Pledge, and the idea was to create 10 steps to help people or to help the companies to start thinking about sustainability. These are not like the 10 commandments in the Bible. I don't think that's something that you can do because one thing that we can change today, it's probably not the same thing that we'll need to address in 2 or 3 months or years, So I don't like to call it as commandments, but as suggestions. I think you kind of do the same thing, maybe not 10 suggestions, but what are the key suggestions that you would give to companies when they're starting their sustainability practices, drive or roads?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting question because we're not a sustainability consultancy necessarily, and I have to be very careful to not cross that line. And I'm always reminding the team that we are not sustainability consultants. Our job is not to help businesses reduce their carbon emissions. And of course, any business goes through a process. Ideally, they're going through a process of auditing their activities and identifying where the hotspots are, where do we need to reduce our carbon emissions, where is the real problem to be solved in the way that we operate, in the way we do business. And that tends to be much higher and much more complicated for manufacturing businesses that have very kind of sprawling supply chains versus a service business like us or like you, where, we don't have a lot of manufacture of stuff. There's not materials and mining going on and that kind of stuff. So with any business, once they've worked out what they actually need to do in order to face into this kind of brave new world that we're entering, this transition that's needed, there's then a conversation about, okay, how do we talk about this? How do we position this? How do we frame it? Where does it live in the business? Do we just do it? Because a lot of businesses just do it behind the scenes and it lives in operations and compliance and risk, and no one else talks about it. And I think realistically, that can't be the way businesses operate, because all of us need to move towards more sustainable ways of working. And the question is, where does it touch the consumer experience of what you're doing? You don't have to talk about everything, and consumers don't get supply chains. Why would they? They don't know what they are. They've never known that they existed before. So you're not going to tell them about everything you're doing, but there'll be some things that could, sustainability might be about changing the way things are done, and maybe you need to mitigate the impacts because they're perceived as negative, or maybe you need to embrace the opportunities that are arising from something like circularity, refurbishment, repair. It opens up a whole new business model, a whole new source of revenue. So kind of understanding, if we think about the way people perceive the business, where do we need to mitigate the impact of sustainability? Where is it just going to flow because it's natural and it feels like common sense? Where do we optimize it? And where do we actually talk about sustainability versus talking about other direct benefits like reducing costs, increasing efficiencies, reducing waste? These are the direct benefits that people care about.
Do you feel the customers and the clients and even the employees are more aware nowadays of what a company says they're doing versus what they're actually doing?
Definitely. And I mean, inevitably, we're all at different points on the trajectory. So we know that maybe 15% of most countries are climate deniers. They're not interested. And then you've got a spread between those and working up the adoption curve, kind of early and late majority, and then into early adopters and laggards. And every audience for every brand will contain a spread of people. So there's going to be differing levels of awareness. But I think what's very challenging is that even if people understand the benefits of doing things that help the environment, of things that reduce waste and all those common sense things, preserving resources, they're very, very nervous of anything labeled sustainability. And that's what I talk about, the S word, that actually it's becoming more and more problematic. And should we be labeling things as green and sustainability when we're going to be doing it and people are doing this stuff anyway? How helpful is it? And to your point about, people getting concerned about this difference, and it's the say-do gap that we don't talk about so much. We talk a lot about the consumer say-do gap. Consumers are talking about the brand and government say-do gap. And realistically, we're starting from zero trust. People just don't buy it most of the time. Something like 64% of us, I think the stat is in my presentation, we don't buy the sustainability claims. We even think that companies will lie if it means that they're going to make more sales about how environmental they are. So we're starting from a real trust deficit, and we can't assume that people just will listen to this stuff and buy into it.
And how can brands build that trust?
I think it's about relationship building. So at C-Space, we always talk about stronger relationships build stronger brands. And the way that you build relationships, predictably, insight has a huge role to play. Listening, talking, creating a dialogue, but one of partnership as opposed to looking down on people. The idea of collaboration. I had someone in a workshop the other day, a consumer, say, I just wish they'd talk to us more. I wish they'd talk to us about what the solutions could be so that we could work on them together. It needs to be a collaborative effort. And that notion of collaboration comes up time and time again as well between, big brands like the Unilevers of the world, leaders in their categories, collaborating with other partners to change systems, change operations. So building trust is about asking the right questions, really properly listening. And that means listening to the people that you don't want to listen to, like climate deniers and skeptics, because actually they're some of the most fascinating people to speak to, as well as the early adopters that you think are going to buy into this stuff. And then working with them in a way that's co-creative, that's collaborative on what the solution could be.
Do you think brands don't listen? Not even like in a sustainability area, but like in general, you think brands only ask the questions to the people that already know that they're going to answer what they want to say?
Yeah, it's a good question, because in market research, we have a natural tendency to reject the rejectors. We always screen out the rejectors. We don't want the people that don't buy the brand. We don't want to hear from the people that don't like the idea. Yep. And we tend to screen out the people at the top as well in sustainability. People always say to me, we're building a screener for sustainability. Can we get rid of the deniers and skeptics and get rid of the innovators? I just want to speak to the mainstream. And it's really fascinating because for sustainability, you have to get everyone buying into it. Otherwise, we're not going to get anywhere. And there's a huge amount to learn. But also, by labeling people late and early majority or labeling people mainstream, we're forgetting that there's a huge amount of skepticism in there. But maybe they don't feel the social pressure, or maybe they feel the social pressure to conform. Whereas the great thing about talking to climate deniers and skeptics is they don't care. They've already said they don't believe in it. So then they'll be very upfront about, brands are doing this, I don't buy it. Yeah. Where does that come from? So it's really refreshing, actually, to speak to them. And of course, in insights, we're always asking brands to connect with consumers better, to listen to them. But the thing I found with sustainability is just that we're just frequently asking the wrong questions. We're asking, do people care? How much do people care? What do they want to prioritize? And those aren't the questions to be asking.
Right. And do you think just brands don't follow up on what they ask? Like I can ask you what do you want to see in my brand to be so sustainable? And then you ask me and then you answer me back with something. And then I'll implement that. But then I don't really follow up if I'm really implementing that. And the customer will probably notice that.
There's definitely a challenge of that. I think there's an issue of if you're asking the wrong question, then you're going to get the wrong answer back. There's also an issue of just asking consumers things that they're not really qualified to tell you. It's not the consumer's job to tell you how to lower your carbon emissions. That's your operations team that look at the auditing. the role of insights and marketing and brands and comms is to find out what do people need in their lives that improve the quality of their life, and how do we fit into that with this new, better, sustainable way of working. We have to come up with those answers. So I think the challenge is that it's very easy to be lazy in sustainability, but it's not research as usual. We have to change it up. We have to use different tools. We have to use different techniques. We have to be savvier and cleverer and more nuanced and go deeper with ethnography, looking at behaviors, not claimed behaviors. So we have to make more of an effort, to be honest, if we're going to do some good work in this area.
And could it be the claim in itself? Like brands just say that they want to save the world, but maybe the right claim would be to improve lives of people instead of save the world.
Yeah, completely. Because we buy the toast, not the toaster.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
We go for direct benefits. And this isn't new to marketing. This is what we always sell a car based on how sexy it makes you look, or, we've always looked at functional emotional benefits. So I'm not sure why we're not doing that increase. We sell sustainability as a benefit. It's not, for most people, sustainability is not a benefit in and of itself. It's a vehicle for other benefits. So if you operate more sustainably, you can save money. If you're reducing your energy usage, if you're wasting less food, if you are buying secondhand, it can make you money if you're selling secondhand, if you're keeping things in the circular economy. Yeah. Those are the things that people care about. So as a brand, you can say, I'm saving the planet. And people will go, that sounds nice. That sounds like something you should do.
Good for you.
But inside they're going, but what's in it for me?
Yeah.
Why should I care? And unless you've got a direct benefit for them, people will say, well, that's great, but what's the point? Unless they're really, really engaged, and they're really bought into it.
Do you think there's brands or companies that can create an engagement so big that they can skip that whole part? Because I'm thinking like the big brands.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they are like, we kind of work on the hype market now. Mm. Your brand can be really hyped and really big and everyone talks about it. But then in a week, people just forget about it because then there's a new shiny toy.
Yeah.
There's the new shiny logo. There's the new thing. So do you think those brands can skip that I'm saving the world, but at the same time, they will be forgotten easily?
I don't think so. I think ultimately it has to be a kind of patchwork quilt of everything, because brands cannot get away with not saving the world anymore. The transition is inevitable. Just get on board, because otherwise you're going to be behind. That's the fact of it. If you don't do it first, someone else is going to come in. So there's an awful lot of brands I see that are just coasting, hoping nobody comes along with a more sustainable alternative. Because when we look at loyalty on paper, in inverted commas, actually a lot of those people are just stuck and captive, and they don't know where to go next. So if someone comes along like Tony's Chocolonely, for example, coming into the chocolate market, a lot of people jumped and went, that's better. Yeah. And they didn't see it coming. Yeah. Not everyone, but a lot of people, enough to be a threat. So I agree, it's kind of, you have to layer everything on top. Even the likes of Unilever, who are doing a huge amount with their sustainable living plan, are still selling the direct benefits of Dove shampoo or whatever else product it is. You can't get away with that. But the key thing is to make sure that you're staying ahead of, what does it look like to be sustainable for the consumer moving forward? So if you want to be a leader in a category, what does leadership look like in this space? Not just in my category, but in all categories that people are connecting with. Because if you can't stay ahead of that, it's changing so quickly. 3 months, 6 months. If you come up, I was talking to a client earlier who we're working with, and she came to the talk and she said, how's the project going? We're working on developing a playbook. And I was saying, it's great, but this is a playbook of do's and don'ts in sustainability. It's going to be out of date in 3 or 6 months. You know that, right? And we're trying to get them to keep refreshing it. It's got to be longitudinal. This is an ongoing study. Everything's changing. Because
at the end, that's kind of the problem with brands. They say they do the thing, but then they don't follow up. And if you say that I'm not gonna buy this towel ever again, but then in 2 months, that's not the problem. The problem is the table. Yeah. So if you continue to buy the table, sure, but now the problem is there's always a different problem. Yeah. Thank you so much for this conversation. This was really interesting. It's as I say, it's really interesting to have short conversations to my idea is like always to plant a seed, and then so people can like learn a bit more and then kind of investigate more.
Yeah.
We'll link your keynote in the description so people can like learn more about your
Great.
practices.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for this.
Thanks for having me. It was fun. Nice to meet you.
You can't know the answer to a question without first asking it. But how do you ask the questions? More importantly, how will people answer them? That is where Question Pro comes in to support you, empowering you to build and deploy amazing experiences that collect clean and useful data. With our powerful online-based, built-for-enterprise survey platform, it is easy to create, collect, and act on your data. Create an impactful survey in minutes from scratch by importing an existing survey, or choose from over 350 ready-made templates that have been vetted by our expert market research professionals. Add as many respondent contacts as you want and share them through multiple distribution methods. Collect offline data and use white-labeled mobile apps to ensure data collection is extensive and up-to-date. Take advantage of our specialized services to manage enterprise projects, as well as the instances where the insights collection is complicated but imperative. Then, leave the rest to Question Pro. Sit back and watch us work magic as the data is analyzed and compartmentalized into functional insights automatically. Create role-based access reports in addition to exporting the data and insights into your proprietary toolset, allowing you to focus on what's most important. Making smart decisions. Question Pro. Survey software that gets the job done.